Ilyas Bulbulia, and I'll be with you for the next hour. As our regular viewers are aware, the Fee Legal Advice Show provides you, our viewers, the opportunity to call in and ask any questions that you have on any aspect of English law. On this show, I'm able to cover a vast, diverse range of matters ranging from immigration law matters, family law matters, criminal law matters. So whatever your legal questions are, please do get in touch. Two ways to get in touch. You can ring on the landline number which appears at the bottom of the screen. Alternatively, a very popular way of getting in touch is to send us a message on the mobile number which also appears at the bottom of the screen. On this show, we get numerous questions on immigration law, which is fantastic. Please do continue to send those questions in. In addition to immigration law, I am able to deal with a vast, diverse range of legal matters. Matters could be relating to family law matters, criminal law matters, personal injury law matters. So whatever your questions are, please do get in touch. Now, what I do find that in respect of most of the questions that come in here live in the show, I'm able to deal with them straight away and respond to the questions and provide advice to the questions straight away. Now, if it transpires that the matter is more urgent, or it transpires that it requires a more thorough discussion, or I need to look at documents, then I'm happy to have a discussion off air for confidential matters, for complex matters where I need to look at documents. It's not a problem having a conversation off air, and that is a service that we provide completely free of charge as part of the Free Legal Advice Show. Now, as always, we have a number of questions coming in, which is fantastic. Please do continue to send those questions in. Now, let's look at some of the issues that we've had coming in today. Now, one of the first questions that's come in is from Brother Khatib, and his question is in relation to his wife's visa in the United Kingdom. So, Brother Khatib says, my wife is currently in the United Kingdom with a spouse visa. When does she qualify for indefinite leave to remain? Is it after 5 years or is it after 10 years? Now, this is a very common question, and I can understand why this question does arise in practice quite regularly, because there are two routes to settlement where somebody is here on a spouse visa, a partner visa. They could be on a 5-year route to settlement, or they could be on a 10-year route to settlement. Now, the difference is on a 5-year route, you would qualify for indefinite leave to remain after 5 years. On the 10-year route, it would take 10 years to qualify for indefinite leave to remain. The difference between the two is this, that if all the requirements of the immigration rules are met, then you can qualify for an extension after 2.5 years under the 5-year route, and you can qualify for indefinite leave to remain after 5 years. That's where the immigration rules are met. And what do I mean by that? In practice, that normally means that when you extend your visa, the income requirement is met, whether it's £18,600 or whether it's a different test. The financial requirement is met. Another key aspect of applying for an extension is that the English language requirement is met. So in terms of the language requirement at the extension stage, at the indefinite stage, that is met as well. So as long as the requirements are met, the financial requirement, the English language requirement, the application is submitted in time, then what would happen is that you could apply for an extension and indefinite leave to remain under the 5-year route. Now, the problem arises is, in terms of the question from Brother Khatib, it's not clear what his own personal circumstances are. But the problem arises where somebody ends up on the 10-year route. So in practice, that normally happens in 3 different circumstances. Now, that is where, for example, where somebody has made an application late, for example. So the time for extensions come and they've missed it. Maybe they've applied a few weeks late, a few months late. Fine, for whatever reason, the application has been granted. Normally, where there are children, the application will be granted. But what happens is that the applicant is then put on the 10-year route to settlement. In the same way, if at the extension stage, let's say the application is submitted on time, but the problem is that the income requirement isn't met, but there are children who are British, then what the Home Office will do is grant the visa under the 10-year route. So if it's submitted late or if it's submitted in time, but the financial requirement can't be met, then the visa will be granted under the 10-year route. And another situation, less common in practice, is where the English language, English knowledge, or life in the UK requirement isn't met. So at the extension stage, if the person isn't able to pass the A2 test, or at the indefinite stage, if if you don't submit your A2 certificate to try and extend it, even though you're at the indefinite stage, you could end up on the 10-year route to settlement. So that's the difference. And Brother Khatib's question, he hasn't given us enough details to be able to address his specific scenario, his wife's specific scenario, but in general terms, work on the basis that you will be on the 5-year route unless there's been a problem somewhere along the line, which means that you've been put on the 10-year route to settlement. But thank you very much indeed for that question. And now let's look at the next question that's come in. And that's from a very related question, and that's from Brother Anas. And his question actually relates to an application for indefinite leave to remain. And what Brother Anas says is that he was hoping to apply for indefinite leave to remain, but he has been unable to pass the life in the UK test. So his question really is, what's going to happen? Now, this does happen, not as often as you may think, but it does happen. And where it does happen, what you should really aim to do is try and stay on the 5-year route to settlement. So when you've completed 5 years, like Brother Anas has, and he was hoping to apply for indefinite leave to remain, what I would suggest is, look, still meet the financial requirement. So the 18,600 requirement or whatever it is, try and make sure that's met. The other thing that you've got to do is make sure that the English language certificate, whatever you have, whether it's the old O2 test certificate, A2 test certificate, or if you've managed to do the B1 test certificate, submit that. What that will do is you won't be able to get indefinite leave to remain, but you will stay on the 5-year route. So even when you get the extension after 5 years, you will stay on the 5-year route to settlement. And what that means, the big advantage of that is that even if you apply later on you pass the life in the UK test, which you're struggling to pass at the moment. Later on, when you pass the life in the UK test, you will be able to apply for indefinite leave to remain straight away. That's the advantage of staying on the 5-year route, even at the indefinite stage. If you can't pass the life in the UK test, stay on the 5-year route with the extension. You will be able to apply for indefinite leave to remain as soon as you meet that particular requirement. The problem with going on to the 10-year route, let's say you're not bothered, you don't bother demonstrating that you meet the financial requirement. The problem then is this, that you will end up on the 10-year route to settlement. So even if you meet, the problem is with English, even if you fulfill that requirement a few months down the line after you've got the extension, because you're on the 10-year route, that's then of no good to you. You end up having to complete the full 10 years. So I hope that answers that particular question. The next question that's come in is from Brother Adnan. We've got a lot of questions coming in relation to spouse applications. So what Brother Adnan is saying is that in relation to the financial requirement, he isn't earning £29,000 a year, but he is, he says, caring for a relative and in receipt of carer's allowance. So Adnan wants to sponsor his wife to come to the United Kingdom. He isn't earning £29,000 a year. He is in receipt of carer's allowance. Now, assuming, Adnan, you have no children here in the UK and you also don't have any commitment in terms of rent, mortgage, council tax. That's the assumption I'm making. Adnan, you haven't clarified that. But on the basis that you are receiving carer's allowance, you would be exempt from the £29,000 requirement. Fantastic. It does make the application much easier. Potentially, you could satisfy the financial requirement simply by showing that you're in receipt of carer's allowance and you're receiving £100 a week in terms of employment income. Total will come up to about £181.90 a week, but because you're exempt from the £29,000 requirement, you still satisfy the financial requirement there. Thank you very much indeed for that question. We're taking a short break. Inshallah, we'll be back after the break.
Sainsbury's? Are we made of money?
Hey Sainsbury's, explain it, will you?
Well, the same effort we put into our baking
goes into matching prices.
Remarkable. We've actually come in under budget.
Get it now?
Already got it.
Sainsbury's. Good food for all of us.
Our generation's risk of illnesses, like measles and whooping cough, is rising.
If we're not vaccinated,
We're not protected.
and could get seriously ill, risking lifelong disabilities.
Are your child's vaccines up to date?
I'm in. Now, you ready for a good day?
He was a scientific hypothesis. She was a clinical study. And the future breakthrough that could cure her is closer than ever. With our research, we can keep saving lives like hers. Donate now to turn science fiction into reality.
Sainsbury's? Are we made of money?
Hey Sainsbury's, explain it, will you?
well. The same effort we put into our baking
Goes into matching prices.
Remarkable. We've actually come in under budget.
Get it now?
Already got it.
Sainsbury's. Good food for all of us.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the free legal advice show on British Muslim TV. I'm your host, Ilyas, Bulbulia. To speak to me live on air, please ring on the landline number which appears at the bottom of the screen. And as always, a popular way of getting in touch is to bring us on the, send us a message on the mobile number which also appears at the bottom of the screen. Now, just before the break, we were dealing with a question from Brother Adnan. Brother Adnan's question was relating to sponsoring his wife to come to the United Kingdom. And he was saying that he's in receipt of carer's allowance. I'm assuming he doesn't have any children in the UK, isn't sponsoring children to come to the UK, no rent or council tax to pay. And I was advising that potentially he could meet the lower financial requirement, if I can call it that, simply by demonstrating that he's on carer's allowance and earns £100 a week. And the reason I've come back to this question is that there is also another way of meeting the lower financial requirement by demonstrating, if you're in receipt of carer's allowance, by demonstrating that, look, you get carer's allowance, plus you get universal credit, plus you've got savings of £5,000. So that combined, even without a job, would be sufficient. So it would be carer's allowance, universal credit, and savings of £5,000 held in your bank account for a period of 6 months. That's another way of meeting the financial requirement. Now, in my experience, that is probably a much easier way of meeting the financial requirement. There's no concern about jobs and how long you've been holding that job, etc. All you're showing is paperwork. I'm in receipt of carer's allowance. Here it is. I get universal credit. Here's the universal credit printout from the government website. I've got £5,000 in savings. Here's my bank statement. So it's all there in black and white. It's normally one of the easiest applications that we'll go through. But thank you very much indeed in respect of that question. Now, the next question that's coming is from, I'm reading the question as it's coming. It's from Amir, and Amir's question is slightly different. Amir's question relates to asylum, and he says, Assalamu alaikum. My wife has applied for asylum in the United Kingdom. Could you give me an idea as to how long it will take for the asylum process to finish? Jazakallah, thank you very much for that question. Look, again, we don't have much in terms of background. I can sort of give you basic information. In my experience, what's happening is that asylum claims from certain countries seem to be taking a long time to be decided. So, for example, if somebody is from Afghanistan, if somebody is from Syria, Somalia, etc., Iran, etc., in my experience, those applications tend to take longer to be decided. Whereas certain other countries, in my experience now, they seem to be processed much quicker. It is possible that it could be processed within a space of a few months. So it just depends. I think if the Home Office looks at the matter as being complex, then it may end up taking a lot longer to be processed. But straightforward applications, they seem to be processed. The first screening interview, then the main interview, all seems to sort of move on and happen fairly quickly. So we don't know the background, unfortunately, but work on the basis that it could take anything from 6 months to about 18 months for the application to be processed. But thank you very much indeed for that question. Another question from Brother Yusuf, and that is in relation to EU application. Now, in terms of an EU application, what Brother Yusuf says is that my mother-in-law came to the United Kingdom and has pre-settled status in the United Kingdom, sponsored by a brother who has a Portuguese passport. Okay, I understand that. Her biometric residence card finishes on 31st of December 2024, does she need to do anything? Does she need to apply for a visa? Now, again, this is actually a very common question in practice. And it's all to do with e-visas. There is a requirement to apply for an e-visa if your card expires on the 31st of December 2024. But that applies to somebody who has a biometric residence permit. It doesn't apply to somebody who's got biometric residence card, which is what European family members have. So it doesn't apply to somebody who is a European family member. They don't need to apply for an e-visa at all. Now, in practice, what's happening is, obviously, it's difficult for people to differentiate or be sure about what their position is. So we get a lot of queries from people who have residence permits, who need to register for an e-visa. We also get an equal number of questions from people with a biometric residence card, and they feel that when the card expires on the 31st of December 2024, they must have to do something. I mean, the visa's expiring, but that's not the case. The date on the card, the expiry date of the card, has nothing to do with your visa anymore. That's simply a date when your card expires. But if you have a biometric residence card, you actually don't need to do anything. And the reason for that is the Home Office already has your data. The system was set up with 31st of December 2024 in mind. So your data is all registered and there with the Home Office. So in effect, the e-visa is already in place for anybody who's a European family member with a card that is expiring on the 31st of December 2024. However, for the benefit of our viewers who have a biometric residence permit, so these are normally people who've come to the UK on a spouse visa, come to the UK on a work permit, come to the UK on a student visa, etc. As far as they are concerned, yes, they do need to register for an e-visa. Try and do it before the 31st of December 2024. Okay, the reason you need to do it is that e-visas are going to be what you're going to require for a lot of different things. For example, if you go outside the UK and you're coming back into the UK, the airport staff will check your e-visa. They'll look at your status, your immigration status, whether you can come, you've got the visa to come to the UK or not. So for traveling, you will need an e-visa. You will also need an e-visa if you are working in the UK and your employer asks you to prove your right to work. You'll need that e-visa system to demonstrate your right to work. If you want to get a mortgage, I suspect what's going to happen is that the mortgage company will ask you to prove your status using the e-visa system. Likewise, if you are renting, the landlord will want evidence of whether you've got the right to rent or not by requesting your e-visa. So there's a whole host of different scenarios in which you will need to demonstrate your right to work using the e-visa system. So by the 31st of December, plenty of time, try and get that done. Now, even if you do it afterwards, it's not a problem. Only issue really is, if you need to travel urgently, if you need to prove your status urgently, you haven't done it, you're going to be rushing around trying to get your e-visa done. So there's plenty of time. We've got the whole of October, November, December. Get it done, get it out of the way. If there's any glitches with the system, if there's any problems, you've got enough time to sort it all out. So do try and get all of it done as soon as possible. But thank you very much indeed, Brother Yusuf, for that question. Another related question from Brother Abdus is in relation to somebody, and this is what Brother Abdus says, and he's inquiring about a relative. Salams. My relative has indefinite leave to remain in their passport, and it's a stamp in the passport. They want to register for an e-visa. Is it possible? Again, this is a common problem. People have been using their indefinite status in their passport. It might be an old passport, which might be 10, 15 years old. But they've carried that around, and that proves their immigration status. So there will be a sticker in an old passport saying you've been granted indefinite leave to remain. It's either a sticker or a stamp saying you have indefinite leave to remain. And that's worked up until now. The problem is that won't work. If you're traveling, that won't be sufficient anymore. Right to work, that has been unacceptable for a number of years now. What do you need to do? Well, in your situation, you can't apply for an e-visa directly. You first have to apply for a residence permit. So the first step is apply for a residence permit, and then you're going to be able to apply for an e-visa. So again, start the process now so that it's all sorted by the 31st of December when the new system kicks in. But thank you very much, Abdus, for that question. Now, that takes us neatly to our next break.
Sainsbury's? Oh, we made of money.
Hey Sainsbury's, explain it, will you?
Well, the same effort we put into our baking
Goes into matching prices.
Remarkable. We've actually come in under budget.
Get it now?
Already got it.
Sainsbury's. Good food for all of us.
Our generation's risk of illnesses,
Like measles and whooping cough, is rising. If we're not vaccinated, we're not protected, and could get seriously ill, risking lifelong disabilities. Are your child's vaccines up to date?
I'm in. Now, you ready for a good day?
He was a scientific hypothesis. She was a clinical study. And the future breakthrough that could cure her is closer than ever. With our research, we can keep saving lives like hers. Donate now to turn science fiction into reality.
Sainsbury's? Oh, we made of money.
Hey Sainsbury's, explain it, will you?
well, the same effort we put into our baking
Goes into matching prices.
Remarkable. We've actually come in under budget.
Get it now?
Already got it.
Sainsbury's. Good food for all of us.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the Free Legal Advice Show on British Muslim TV. I'm your host, Ilyas. Bulbulia. To speak to me live on air, please ring on the landline number which appears at the bottom of the screen. Alternatively, a very popular way of getting in touch is to send us a message on the mobile number which also appears at the bottom of the screen. Now, let's look at some of the other questions that have been coming in. And it is from Yash, This question again relates to asylum, similar to the last question we received. Let's have a look. And Yash says, I will be applying for asylum this week. Could you let me know how does this work? Awaiting your response. Okay. Now, in terms of, I think what you're trying to get at, or what you're trying to get some guidance on, is the process. And it looks like you're at the initial stage. So how do you make an application for asylum? Now, without looking at the merits of your case, just looking at the process, what you would need to do, starting point, step one, is to contact the asylum intake unit. So if you go onto the government website, which deals with asylum, there is a specific page there, and it will tell you how you contact the asylum intake unit. There's a number there, in my recollection, I think it's 0330 or something like that. And then it gives you times as to when the asylum intake unit is open during the week, around 9 till 9:30 or something in that region. So step one, Yash, is for you to contact the asylum intake unit. And it's a call center type operation initially, where they simply take your details. And they take your details, and what they will say to you is that you will be contacted by somebody else who will be making an appointment for you. So brief details about your name, your date of birth, your address, passport number, etc. And then you'll be told that you will be contacted in due course by somebody who will contact you in order to take further details and to arrange the screening interview. So that's stage one. Stage two, you will be contacted by somebody normally within 2 to 3 days on an unknown number, and you will be told about the interview, and a date and time will be arranged for the asylum screening interview. It's not the main interview, screening interview. So they'll tell you, they'll confirm it by email, etc. So that's the second stage out of the way. Third stage of this initial process is that you will be called to a screening interview. Now, the screening interview, it takes about 10-15 minutes. They will ask you basic questions about your asylum claim. It's not an in-depth interview. Nobody's going to look at your documents. Nobody's going to look at your asylum claim in any detail. So in terms of what they ask you, it's going to be more detail about your circumstances. So your name, date of birth, where you work, your health conditions, your family here, your family abroad. And then in terms of the actual asylum claim, it is actually quite limited in terms of what they ask. They normally ask you about, in very general, broad terms, what your asylum claim is about. So they're not going into any detail. It's literally a question there, what is your asylum claim about? And you will answer that in 2 or 3 sentences. So that's stage 3. That's the screening interview out of the way. The next stage is normally that you will get a questionnaire which you will be required to fill in to explain what your claim is about. And then stage 5 is your actual substantive interview, which can last anything from 2 hours to 4 or 5 hours, where they will ask you more detailed questions about your asylum claim. So that's the typical sort of timeline in terms of the asylum process. So that's typically what happens when you're claiming asylum. But That's fine. Hope that answers your question. Next question is from Sister Hafiza, and her question relates to sponsoring somebody to come to the UK on a skilled visa route. And what Hafiza says is that I want to sponsor somebody to come to the UK as a skilled worker. I have a sponsor license. Can you please tell me what the process is? Okay, now, in terms of the skilled worker process, if you have the sponsor license already, it depends on where the person is who you are going to sponsor. Whether it's possible to sponsor them from within the UK, in which case there's a separate process of requesting a certificate of sponsorship, or if they're abroad, or if they need to go abroad and then apply because they can't transfer to a skilled worker route within the UK, there's an application for defined certificate of sponsorship. So different processes in terms of where the person is ultimately going to apply from. But whatever you do, you do need to bear in mind that the first step is the certificate of sponsorship, the request for that. Now, that may take a few days to be processed, or if it's something that goes into a closer scrutiny, it could take roughly 2 to 3 months to be processed. So it really does depend on where we are in terms of what the Home Office thinks of your request for a certificate of sponsorship. If it looks straightforward and it's granted, fantastic. If not, it could take around 2 to 3 months for it to be granted. So that's the first stage, the certificate of sponsorship. Once that's approved, the next stage is for the certificate of sponsorship to be assigned to the employee. That's step 2. And once that is done, the next step is for the certificate of sponsorship. Once it's assigned, it then allows the potential employee to apply for a skilled worker visa. So that's the process that you go through. If you have a sponsor license already, then you can make a request for a certificate of sponsorship. If it's granted, you can assign the certificate of sponsorship, and then that will allow your employee to apply for a skilled worker visa. So that's the basic process that you need to go through. Now, obviously, that's the process. It's more complicated than that. The Home Office will look at the request in detail to make sure that's correct, to make sure that it's a genuine request for sponsorship. The Home Office will, when the person applies for a skilled worker visa, they may even interview that process because they want to know that the person is genuinely coming to the UK to fill a genuine post. So it is slightly more complicated than just going through the process. At each stage, the Home Office can make certain inquiries. But thank you very much indeed for that question. The next question that's come in is from Sister Sarah. And what she says is that she has applied for her child's pre-settled status, and the Home Office have come back and requested certain documents. That's fine. It is not unusual where you make an application for pre-settled status or settled status for the Home Office to come back and say, look, we need certain documents, more information before we can approve your application. So that's not unusual at all. When that request is received, you need to try and address that as soon as possible. So normally what will be required is you will need to log back into the system, where you submitted your application, the EU settlement scheme application. So you need to log back in, and there is a tab there which allows you to upload those additional documents that have been requested. So that's basically how you do it. But thank you very much indeed for that. Next question that's come in is from Brother Shiraz, and that is regarding a spouse application. And Brother Shiraz has quite a long question. He said, the query is regarding my brother. He is a Pakistani national living in Germany on a long-term resident visa. His wife, a British citizen, wants to apply for his visa to come to the United Kingdom on a permanent basis. She has over £88,000 in savings in her account since May 2024. Okay, few questions, he says. Does she have to come to the UK to apply, or can she sponsor him while she is still in Germany? There's a number of other questions as well, but let me just tackle that first question that's been raised. Does she have to come to the UK in order to sponsor her husband? The answer is no. You can make the application whilst you are both abroad. The financial requirement is met by savings, which is fine. You don't need to come here. We'll look at the other questions when we come back from our short break. See you in the next couple of minutes. Assalamu alaikum.
Sainsbury's? Oh, he made her money.
Hey Sainsbury's, explain it, will you?
Well, the same effort we put into our baking
Goes into matching prices.
Remarkable. We've actually come in under budget.
Get it now?
Already got it.
Sainsbury's. Good food for all of us.
Our generation's risk of illnesses.
Like measles and whooping cough is rising. If we're not vaccinated, we're not protected. And could get seriously ill. Risking lifelong disabilities. Are your child's vaccines up to date?
I'm in. Now, you ready for a good day?
He was a scientific hypothesis. She was a clinical study. And the future breakthrough that could cure her is closer than ever. With our research, we can keep saving lives like hers. Donate now to turn science fiction into reality.
Sainsbury's? Oh, he made her money.
Hey Sainsbury's, explain it, will you?
well, the same effort we put into our baking
Goes into matching prices.
Remarkable. We've actually come in under budget.
Get it now?
Already got it.
Sainsbury's. Good food for all of us.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the Free Legal Advice Show on British Muslim TV. I'm your host, Ilyas Bulbulia. If you've got any questions, please do get in touch on the landline number or on the mobile number. You can send your questions through. This is the last segment of the show. We've got another 10-15 minutes to go. We've had a number of questions coming in, and just before the break, I was looking at this question from Brother Shiraz, which relates to his brother who is in Germany. And for the benefit of our viewers, I'll just very quickly read the question again. And he says, the question is for my brother, Pakistani national living in Germany on a long-term visa. His wife, a British citizen, wants to apply for his visa, spouse visa, to come to the United Kingdom on a permanent basis. And they want to come around November. She has over £88,000 in savings in her bank account, which she has held since May. And the question that Brother Shiraz raises is, does she have to come to the UK, before he is able to apply for a spouse visa to join her in the United Kingdom? And I very quickly answered the question just before the break, saying there's no requirement that whoever is British, your husband or wife, has to be in the UK and they have to sponsor you to come to the UK. You've got to be physically in the UK. There's no requirement. Normally what happens in practice is that they are in the UK. So in this case, the wife is normally in the UK because the financial requirement has to be met. And that is normally met by the wife working in the United Kingdom and earning whatever the requirement is. It used to be 18,600, now it's £29,000. So the sponsor is normally physically in the UK earning this money. Now, if you are in a situation such as this, where the financial requirement is going to be met by way of savings, then there's no requirement for the wife to be here to be working, because we're not showing employment. What we are showing is that you have savings in your bank account. And all you need to demonstrate is that obviously when husband's visa is granted, you will both move to the United Kingdom. So you might just need to show a tenancy agreement showing that there is property in the UK that you will be coming to live at. So you're showing your intention that you are both coming to, obviously you can't have a situation where the wife stays in Germany and the husband comes to the UK. You must both intend to move to the United Kingdom and live in the United Kingdom, which is fine. It doesn't mean that in this scenario the wife who's British has to come first. You can both come together once the visa is granted. So that's fine. Now the second question he asks is, what documents do you need from them? Well, look, the requirements have to be fulfilled. So copy of the British sponsor's passport, applicant's passport. There's probably no TB test if you live in Germany. English requirement still has to be fulfilled. When it comes to finances, you've already said they're going to be relying on savings, so we need 6 months of bank statements. Fine. And then accommodation, where you're going to be living. So it has to be for property that you own, friends or family might own, you're going to live there for free, or you've got property on rent and you're going to move there. So you've got to show how the accommodation requirement will be met. And again, finally, hopefully it's not an issue, you have to prove that your relationship is genuine and subsisting. So it does then mean that you will need to show proof that you've been living together. If it's abroad, you could have bills, bank statements coming to the same address. You could show photographs of your wedding. You could show photographs after your wedding, etc. So you have to provide some evidence in relation to the genuineness of the relationship. So that's a very brief overview of the kind of documents that you will need to be submitted. The last question that Brother Shiraz is asking, what will the total fees be? And that's a very important, pertinent question. I can give you an approximate figure in terms of the application fee. That comes out at around £2,000. In terms of the NHS fee, immigration health surcharge, that comes up at around £3,300. So that is £5,300 £300. Most people want to use the priority service and get a quicker decision. Quicker decision, instead of getting a decision in about 3 months, you'd get the decision in about 4 to 5 weeks. So if you use that process, then there's an extra £500 to pay. So it's £2,000 for the application, £3,300 for the immigration health surcharge, the NHST, and then £500 for the priority quicker decision process. And there might be a small fee to pay for the visa centre where the passport is handed in the region of about £70, £80. All in all, most people will use the fast track service and they will end up paying around £5,800. Now, you might decide to do the application yourself, which is fine. You might engage the services of a lawyer. Fees vary, could potentially be anything from about £600 to around £1,500, £2,000. It depends on your lawyer in terms of who you instruct. In my experience with this type of visas, it shouldn't really be exceeding £1,200. Most lawyers might be able to actually do the application much cheaper than that, but that's, in my view, a good sort of estimate. That is really, shouldn't really be paying much more than that. It should really be under that for straightforward applications. But thank you very much indeed for that question. Question from Shamu. I was just looking at this when we went for our break. It's an unfortunate question, but something that happens regularly. And what Brother Shamu says is, in general terms, can you please advise me if somebody sponsors a partner to come to the UK and the marriage breaks down, what can they do or what should they do in terms of the visa, informing the Home Office, etc.? It does happen. Unfortunately, it happens all too often, in my experience. If you're the British spouse and you've sponsored somebody to come to the United Kingdom and for whatever reason the marriage has broken down, you can, if you want, inform the Home Office of the marriage breakdown. If you Google UKVI, yes, UK Visas and Immigration, UKVI marriage breakdown, that should take you to the page on the Home Office website which has a link to a form which has to be completed or can be completed to inform the Home Office of the marriage breakdown. So that notification goes to the Home Office. The Home Office will then look at it and in most cases will then curtail the visa of the person that you sponsored to come to the United Kingdom. So I hope that gives you an idea about, if you want to do this, what you need to do in terms of informing the Home Office of the marriage breakdown. What I should say, and this is something that I tell all clients, that there is a slight misconception here. Understand that you've sponsored your partner to come to the United Kingdom. If your relationship breaks down, that doesn't mean that they have to go back. It doesn't mean that. All it means is the visa that they've been granted based on your relationship, that particular visa will be brought to an end. That's all it means. It doesn't mean that they will be made to go back. And the reason I emphasize that is that when your particular when your marriage breaks down and you inform the Home Office, what will happen is the Home Office will cancel the current visa, and they will give the person from abroad at least 60 days notice of the curtailment. And what that means is that they will have 60 days to apply for another visa in the United Kingdom. Obviously, that other visa, they have to fulfill the requirements of that visa. So, for example, if they want to go from the current partner visa that they have and their marriage is broken down, if they want to go into the skilled worker route, there are conditions which need to be satisfied for that. They will need to satisfy those conditions. If they want to go into the student route, there are conditions which need to be satisfied for that. And if they satisfy those conditions, they will be able to go into the student route. So whatever route there is, or if they divorce and have an Islamic marriage or another civil marriage and they have children, or even based on the marriage, potentially they are able to extend their visa. They could submit a human rights claim, they could submit an asylum claim. The point of making is when the marriage breaks down and you inform the Home Office of that fact, that visa comes to an end, but it still leaves them the option to apply for another visa legitimately, lawfully, to move into that visa route, to extend their visa in the United Kingdom. And that sometimes comes as a bit of a surprise to people, because common sense would suggest that that wouldn't be possible, but it is. But thank you very much indeed for that question. That brings us to the end of the show. Inshallah, we'll be back next week. Until then, Assalamu alaikum.
Sainsbury's. Oh, we made our money.
Hey Sainsbury's, explain it, will you?
Well, the same after we